Alright, so this is a video about the new or newer Haro Group 1 reproduction stems. So I'm going to go over some pros and cons of the new stem. I haven't seen anything out there about these things or anybody really talking about them that have actually used them. So I'm going to touch on some of that in this video. So first off, the pros, obviously just Haro for even making these. You know, their whole line of doing the vintage, retro stuff is just awesome. I mean, I've got the 86 frame and 4 kit. My brother's got theirs. You can see those bikes in another video that I have. So just awesome all around. I think I'm really glad that they did that and reproduced a lot of the parts that they had from back in the day, and they have slight changes. So overall, this stem nice and solid. Obviously it looks really good. Just the nice solid stem, pretty average for what's out there nowadays. If you're running a 1-inch quill type. Anyways, so that's pretty much all I can say about the pros. Is that it looks good, it looks pretty authentic. Now the cons start immediately as soon as you open the box. Now I've got 2 of these stems. I've got this one in blue, I've got the one in green. My brothers have 2 stems. They're both green, and I've seen a handful of them in person that my local bike shop has, and so I've been able to look at these, and this isn't just a one stem issue. So inside that A, you can see that there are metal shavings, or a metal shaving hanging off. Also inside the O, inside that U, you can see some metal hanging off this. And it's like that on all of them. I've actually knocked a couple off whenever I first got it. Some of the stuff was just kind of loose sitting on that painted surface, and not too bad. But on the green one that I have, and I'll just open that one up. So on this green one that I have, you can see that those pieces of metal are actually painted over, some of them. So there's another one under that R, and then right there under the O by the 1, you can see that they were painted over. So that's one thing. This had some flakes and I knocked them off too. The other thing about this is if you look inside here where that bolt goes, there's paint that has come off. And on this side, that paint has come off. And one of the reasons is because on top of the paint not being applied well, or I don't know if it's quality control, I don't know what was going on with these things, it just didn't bond. But the knurling on these bolts is very aggressive, so, and the tolerance is very tight. So all I did was loosen this thing up, the paint comes off, and it wasn't like it grounded, it just kind of came loose. So this thing's never before been installed. There's no, it's never been wrenched on. This is just the way that it came. It's still brand new in the box for all intents. Never had any bars mounted or whatever. So yeah, that's a pretty big flaw. The other problem about this is its actual functionality. So I built my bike a while back, and for the stem I went with a Anlin, not knowing much about them, but just knowing it was kind of period correct, but it had the right color and it was the right price, and for what I was going with on that bike when I built it. So that's what I ended up choosing. So months and months later, 6-7 months later, they came out with these stems, and I was like, well, I've already got mine built, but I might end up using one. So I bought the blue one, not realizing the color was that far off, so it's not going to work for me. I also bought the green one just in case. Well, my brothers also bought 2 green ones for their 86 Masters. And if you'll notice in one of the videos, one of those bikes has blue tape on this bolt right here. And the reason is because the stem spins. It just will not set in there no matter how tight you put this bolt, whatever the deal is. I mean, it's clean, there's no grease, there's no nothing. I mean, it's just straight up. These are brand new forks, you know, brand new 86 reproduction from their frame and fork kit. So new stem, new forks, no contaminants, nice and clean. You know, you standing on the pegs, even a you know, foot jam tail whip, the bars just turn. They just do not hold. So we're trying to figure out what was going on. We didn't know whether the bolt was coming loose. So that little piece of tape you'll see on the other video is just because we were checking to see what was going on, seeing if that bolt was coming loose. Didn't seem likely, but you know, we're just trying to figure out what the heck was going on. The bike that you see that's in the middle, number 44, that was its debut, so it hadn't been ridden yet. So we didn't realize that this problem was existing. So the other thing about the stem is any of you that actually have these Group 1 stems, the originals, know that that is not the quill that they use. So, you know, a lot of newer stems are like that. That's just the design that they have. My Dyno Air has that. Other bikes, my brother's 87 Performer has that type on his OG mallet stem. That Dyno Comp does not have that. And neither does the original Group 1 stem. So it has this type of quill, which you can see the angle on that one versus you know, the angle on that. So the pitch of that wedge or quill or whatever you want to call it, I really don't know. Let's just call it a wedge. So the pitch on that wedge is much tighter on this Anlin built Group 1 original stem. And on that Anlin stem that I have in my bike, that's the same type of wedge that it has, although it does not have the knurling. Another thing you'll notice is that the knurling on this stem is linear and is not the same as this, although they did make some other stems that had those spline type knurlings on there. Something else about this thing, other than having that diamond knurling, which will help, you know, press it against it. I know I looked in the 86 Haro catalog, and they mentioned in their Group 1 stems that it has the anti-slip knurling on there. So this definitely has something to do with it, but I think most of it is that wedge right there. That wedge, you know, when you put these type of stems in the bikes, you don't have to put much tension on that bolt to hold it. As a matter of fact, a lot of you know that on that type, with that type of wedge, you'll have to loosen it quite a bit and then end up getting like a block or something and banging this stem up before it'll come loose. So any of you who have had to fight with that, you know exactly how these things work. And I mean, while anything may spin in there, for the most part, these things are not going to spin around. However, these new Group 1 stems, they just don't work, or they at least do not work in, you know, these original, you know, Haros. So I don't know if it's the rake on the forks or what the deal is. We can't figure it out, but long story short, they just don't work. And to prove my point, so this bolt and wedge is from my brother's Group 1 stem. And so we'll just kind of look in here at what this, you know, what this wedge actually looks like. It's a cast piece, and you can see right there where it's, you know, rotated. It's just, you know, you shouldn't have to modify these things to make them work. They go in there, you would set them where you need them, depending on what type of gyro or rotor system you're working with, and they're just going to work. So this bolt broke off. So, and that was with just tightening the thing to make it work. And what would happen was, you know, the thing would spin and come loose, and so we'd go put a little bit more tension on the bolt, and then it would spin and come loose and put a little more tension on it, and basically just twisted it around. It twisted the bolt and just broke off. So these bolts aren't holding up, but you shouldn't have to put that much tension on there, you know, to wedge this thing inside. So basically this Group 1 stem is just built inferior to the original Group 1 stem. It's just not the same. So although I really appreciate Haro making it, you know, they should have stuck with this type of design. I don't think it's very difficult to do. Now if you want to take the original Group 1 stems and put your new reproduction caps on there, in case you don't want to paint them or whatever the deal is, you don't want to basically restore the old Group 1, you just want to use it, because this one, I'm sorry to say guys, it's going to get used. That one is going to get used. It's not going to go collecting, you know, money or getting more expensive or whatever the deal is. It's not going to be for the collectors. It's going to get put on the bike and it's going to get used. So if you want to do that, take your cap and put it on that stem, and the bolt holes will line up. However, this new stem is about 60 millimeters wide, and the old one is about 58, just over 58 millimeters. So you'll have a little bit of overlap, you know, from the stem cap onto the actual stem itself. So you will have some of that, but if you want to make it work, that's just what you got to do. You know, we've tried everything. We've tried filing down, you know, this wedge inside there to make it nice and smooth, make it operate nice and fluid. But there's just too much binding, and you have to use too much of that bolt tension is being wasted pushing against it, rather than driving it into the wedge and stopping it from rotating, which it's supposed to do. So, you know, they're great. They look pretty, but that's about it. If you're gonna put your bike together and stick it in the corner and say, look at how nice it is, and, you know, wipe it with a cloth every once in a while, great. If you're gonna ride it, if you're gonna jump on it, if you're gonna depend on that bike to hold you without twisting and throwing you to the ground, you need to get a different type of stem and just go with something that has that wedge type quill.